On a sultry summer evening, as music thumped through the walls, our scene unfolds at a wild college bash. In the thick of it, we find Chance, high as a kite, chilling on a couch, barely noticing the world around him, including two girls sharing a kiss nearby. Just then, the brothers Brad and Brett stride in. While Chance, in his dazed state, tries to share his stash, Brett's game, but Brad's had his fill. He's ready to bolt, especially since Leah, the girl he invited, is peeved he's lingering at the party. Brad hits the parking lot, heading home, but is stopped by a random guy needing a lift. Reluctantly, Brad agrees. Suddenly, it's not just one rider but two. As they hit the road, these new companions dodge, giving clear directions. Tension mounts in the car as Brad's unease grows. Half an hour later, enough is enough. Brad demands answers, but instead, things take a dark turn. One stranger orders a stop, snatches the keys, and then things get physical. They corner Brad, swipe his ATM card, force the pin from him, and despite him playing along, they leave him with more than just a bruised ego.
After a harrowing ordeal where he was left bruised and barely clinging to consciousness on the roadside, Brad miraculously makes his way home. Despite his ragged state, his brother Brett, lost in the throes of a raging party, doesn't even notice him. Come morning, a remorseful Brett swings by, sharing tales of a fruitless, revenge-driven search for the goons, knife in hand. Yet, Brad isn't buying it. He's dismissive, quashing any thoughts of retaliation. Post-brotherly squabble, Brad turns documentarian, snapping shots of his battle scars, souvenirs from his roadside rumble. Once patched up, he marches to the police, only to be slapped with accusations of dabbling in drugs rather than getting any real help. Disheartened and self-reproachful, Brad staggers out, the weight of ungained justice heavy on his shoulders. As time stitches his wounds, the mental scars linger. But life pivots forward, and Brad busies himself with the mundane and familiar as college looms. On a brighter note, Brett, now a collegiate himself, rolls back into town and tempts Brad with a party invite. Tentatively, Brad accepts, stepping back into the social swirl, albeit with a stomach knotted with anxiety.
Mocked by Chance for his earlier ordeal, Brad finds solace in Leah's comforting words after admitting his feelings of failure during the attack. Their conversation leads to a tender kiss, momentarily interrupted by Brett's timely humor, lightening the atmosphere. As the brothers head home, Brad, questioning his own courage, presses Brett about his lack of resistance, vowing to stand up for himself should history repeat itself. The following day, while enjoying a swim, Brad shares his aspirations with Brett to join him at the same college. Overjoyed, Brett whisks Brad off to Brookman College, introducing him to his fraternity brothers and friends at a lively fraternity party. Here, Brad meets his future roommate, Will, and even stands up to the swaggering Chance, earning him an apology. Embraced by the Phi Sigma Brotherhood, Brad finds a newfound sense of security and belonging, though the path to full acceptance proves brutal. He and Will, along with other pledges, endure a gauntlet of degrading initiation tasks. From alcohol chugging to hot sauce eating and verbal beratings. One intense evening, Will buckles under the pressure of a particularly grueling task.
Imagine this. Brett, our brave hero, flat out rejects the increasingly wild hazing antics, making it crystal clear, that's a hard no from him. Enter Dixon, the ever-defensive fraternity brother, who swears up and down that this year's shenanigans are nothing compared to the good old days. Cue Brett's discomfort because, let's be honest, that doesn't sound like a party anymore. Fast forward, and the pledges, goats, find themselves blindfolded and chauffeured to a forest middle of nowhere. Surprise, surprise. The blindfolds come off, and Dixon unveils his grand plan. A so-called fun quiz where wrong answers earn you a gulp of booze. Most of the new guys flunk Dixon's trick questions and end up tipsy faster than you can say hazing. Then there's Jim, who nails his question about the good old red, white, and blue. But oh no, Dixon plays dirty and calls it wrong. His twisted idea of punishment? Jim has to slap Brad. Talk about awkward. Reluctantly, and with much provocation, Jim gives Brad a smack. Though Brad wants peace, Dixon stirs the pot, and a slapping duel ensues. Enough is enough, and who comes to the rescue? Brett, our voice of reason, steps up, shutting down Dixon's chaotic game. He declares they've all had their fun, if you can even call it that. Way to go, Brett, for standing up and dialing down the madness.
Well, what a wild ride for the pledges. So, after the brotherly welcome of being doused in food and drinks, things took a turn for the wacky at this fraternity. Picture this, they're out there getting pranked with pretend humps from the brothers, talk about an awkward zoo visit. But hold your horses, it gets crazier. Enter a live goat and some jaw-dropping instructions that would have your grandma clutching her pearls. The brothers were all cheers, and the pledges? Well, they were nothing short of petrified. It was time for a much-needed alcohol buffer. Drunk and blindfolded, they're tricked into believing balloons were, let's just say, a bit more personal. And just when you think it couldn't get more bizarre, poor Brad couldn't stomach the scene and bolted. Meanwhile, the rest of the gang got down and dirty, literally, wrestling in the mud in a goat barn, sleeping amongst their new four-legged friends. To top off this festival of absurdity, they had a keg challenge that turned their stomachs into spinning wheels at a vomit-themed carnival. Pushed to their limits, they drank and puked like there was no tomorrow, desperate to avoid an encore with the goat. What a night, folks. Fraternity life isn't for the faint of heart. After heroically conquering the last drop of the keg, Brad rang the victory bell and the fraternity brothers erupted in cheers, hailing him as the star of the night. Despite the accolades, poor Brad was worse for wear the next morning, snapping a selfie of his gnarly eye bruises, a sobering memento of the night's escapades. Later that day, Dixon geared up the gang, handing over the fraternity's sacred guide, the Phi Sigma Bible, with a solemn reminder that pledging paradise was far from over. They were all in for a semester of servitude. The grand initiation rolled around in a dazzling gym ceremony, where the pledges decked out in their finest Phi Sigma regalia received their badges and the coveted Bible. Amidst the pomp, pride swelled in Brad's chest, but he was quick to spot Brett's absence. Turns out, Brett ditched the ceremony for a gym session, dodging it with a fib about a Spanish test. Feeling the sting of betrayal, Brad stormed into Brett's dorm to demand answers. Under pressure, Brett spilled the beans, revealing that he doubted Brad's tolerance for Dixon's tyranny. The truth, once veiled, was now out in the open. In a heated exchange that could have shaken the very foundations of brotherly love, Brad retorted furiously that it indeed mattered, hinting that Brett might think he's superior. Brett, pushing the dagger deeper, suggested Brad didn't exactly fit the frat mold and should perhaps throw in the towel. Stung by these words, Brad stomped out, fueled by a resolve to prove his doubters wrong. The next scene unfolds with Brad, the unexpected goat whisperer, bonding with a goat outside, while inside the house, the fraternity's hazing antics steamed ahead. Picture this, pledges hopping like popcorn, while brothers chuck fruits and veggies at them. Enter Brad, who's urged by Dixon to hop into this veggie storm or hit the road. Brad stands his ground and refuses, while inside, a comedy of errors sees Chance lobbing an orange that clocks Jim right in the noggin, sending him to the ground. Amidst the chaos, Brad tries to jump to his defense, but Jim, ever the trooper, bounces back pretending all's well to dodge further punishment. Fast forward to the next day, our hero Brad is hit with a blast from the past as his hometown cops buzz him with news they've fingered suspects from a summer scuffle. But Brad's moved on from that drama and gives them the cold shoulder. He spills the beans to Brett, who plays the loyal brother card, pushing for a team up to face these foes. Yet, Brad insists that chapter is closed, leaving Brett swamped with guilt.
So, picture this. Brad's fired up, blaming himself for his buddy Will's tragic exit. Talk about a guilt trip. He's in his dorm, surrounded by Will's stuff, tears quietly spilling. Enter Brett, trying to play comforter, but no dice. Brad's deep in the sorrow zone. Fast forward, and there's a solemn vibe at Will's memorial. All the bros and pals gather. Post-ceremony, Chance, the ever-so-chilled brother, wraps Brad in a bear hug. Sorry mode on. He's like, bro, let's chillax at the frat house tonight. No bruise, just bros. Brad's hesitant, right? But gets his arm twisted into it. Yes, because, well, fraternity lore says, brothers stick together. Talk about peer pressure.
On that fateful afternoon, the fraternity brothers huddled at their house with Dixon, who dropped the bombshell. F Sigma was on probation and under investigation. He spilled that they'd be parading before the provost, sending shivers down Chance's spine, fearing his dad catching wind, while another brother fretted over his scholarship, especially with whispers about Jim's head injury. Cool as a cucumber, Dixon advised playing the "I don't know" card for tough questions. Meanwhile, the crew was steaming because Brad was a no-show, but plot twist. Brad was already in the hot seat at the dean's office. Quizzed about the pledge antics and Jim's previous infirmary trip, Brad dodged like a pro, insisting the past couldn't undo Jim's fate. Later, strolling across campus, the news hit him like a ton of bricks. A junior breathlessly reported the fraternity's year-long suspension. The bomb. Someone had snitched on the hazing. Muddled and mystified, Brad wondered, who was the Judas among them?
Imagine this. Brad returns to his dorm to find it completely trashed, and not just by anything, but goat manure. And the goat? Right there in the middle of the chaos. Apparently, his dear fraternity brothers assumed Brad ratted them out, so they mixed revenge with farm animals. Among the mess, Brad uncovers a box of laxatives. No prizes for guessing their wild plan for the goat. Now, fueled by frustration, Brad drags the goat back to the fraternity house to set things straight and salvage his sullied reputation. But as he strides in, Chance, the fraternity leader, doesn't even let him get a word out. He tags Brad as a traitor and hits him with a face-off. A literal spit and slap combo. Brad's boiling but keeps his cool. Just then, Brad descends like an unexpected hero, admitting he was the informant, not Brad. He schools the crowd about how pointless their hazing traditions are. Quick to flare, Chance lunges at Brett, but guess what? Brett's ready and lands a few good punches, leaving Chance with more than just his pride bruised. In a dramatic turn of events, Brad and Brett leave the toxic brotherhood behind, peeling away to their hometown. The next day, they're frolicking in the sea, washing off the bizarre events like a pair of carefree kids. Finally, they stride into the police station, ready to face the aftermath, with Brad leading the way.